What's up guys, Seth Feider, 2021 Bassmaster Elite Series Angler of the Year. Had an incredible year and just going to recap it for you a little bit this year and some of the things I took away from the year and what I learned. And most of it, I would say, was really fishing a lot more confidently and then really fishing the way I wanted to fish versus, you know, what should have been the deal on paper or anything like that. And very few different baits I used. I really just threw stuff I had the absolute most confidence in rather than, you know, chasing someone else's bite. We started off the year in Florida, had a really good tournament there. I caught all my fish on a Z-Man bang stick on a light Texas rig. I'm pretty sure the majority of the fish I caught were spawning, but fished really slow and made the most of it out of a small area and a really not good practice. And then I think the next tournament after that, we were on the Tennessee River, and that was a bait I used a lot. I caught them all on the OG Slim. That was a bait I used a lot this year. A lot of this is gonna get repetitive, but it's just, looking back on the year, I think I've caught all my fish on less than 10 different baits, and I'm pretty sure every fish I weighed in came out 8 feet of water or less. And I think a lot of that has to do with, I mean, obviously our schedule's based pretty heavy in the spring around the spawn, so that's got something to do with it. But a lot of the, you know, we fished probably half our season where fishing deep essentially should have been the deal. And even when we went up north or Gunnersville in the summer and Lake Fork and stuff like that, there should have been some offshore dominated tournaments. And I stayed shallow. I did a lot of power fishing. You know, a lot of it was done just Ultrex on high, sunglasses on, and a flipping stick in my hand. But back to Tennessee, that was cold water cranking tournament. Did all my damage there on a OG Slim. Next tournament of the year was Pickwick. Had a really awesome practice there on a jackhammer chatterbait in a offshore hydrilla. But that tournament we had, I don't know, we got like a crazy amount of rain the last day of practice overnight, and the next day we woke up for the first day of the tournament. It was supposed to be the first day of the tournament, and I think the river had came up 6 feet. So basically everything I found in practice was junk. Went back to my comfort zone. The water, everything I caught fish out of was dry land in practice, but I just moved. I spent maybe 5 casts where I started or where I found them in practice and just knew it wasn't the deal. I went to the bank, grabbed a flipping stick, and I did a lot of flipping this year too. Either a Texas rig tube on a 4/0 VMC heavy duty ringed hook, or a Seth Feider outcast tackle, flipping jig, one of the two. Kind of locked those in my hands a lot this year, shallow, but I went up, got in the bushes, and had a good tournament flipping a tube at Pickwick. And then the next tournament we went to the Sabine River. That was a huge one for me. Looking at the schedule before the season started, I don't usually do well in Florida, and then tidal rivers, especially you know, Sabine type, Winya type bay, those have always just plagued me, been my worst finishes ever. So coming out of Sabine and Florida, those were honestly ended up being my 2 best tournaments of the year. Really unexpected, but I think that's kind of what I needed to make a run at it. Usually I start off kind of behind the 8 ball and get better as the season goes on and we start heading north, but I had 2 really good finishes down there. And that tournament I was flipping a turbo cross and caught some fish on a Bassman spinnerbait, but stayed shallow, power fish all the time, which you should do at the Sabine. But you know, Pickwick, a lot of guys were trying to fish offshore. Tennessee River, a lot of guys were trying to fish offshore, but stayed shallow. And I think with all the technology we have now, it's so easy to find fish offshore between the side scan, the down imaging, and now with the new live and the 360, I think it's become so easy to find fish offshore that they're receiving a lot of pressure, and a lot of really good pressure. But you know, especially with that live, you know, some people would find fish that were on the move and maybe idle over them and cast back to where they were. But now with the live, you can chase them around and follow them. And I think you saw a lot more of our field, you know, chasing that bite now with the new technology. And I kind of stayed away from that, just stayed power fishing on the bank. And then the next tournament after that was Lake Fork. Had a really good event there, caught a bunch of fish, shallow cranking there, and flipping, a little bit of sight fishing, and then that's where swim jig started to play for me. Outcast tackle, heavy cover swim jig with a turbo cross on the back. Got a lot of fish doing that. Next tournament we went to Neely Henry. We had a lot of up and down situations, and I think that was another thing that benefited me, which probably would have hurt me a lot in the beginning of my career. Is a lot of the tournaments we got thrown, curveballs in between practice and the tournament, whether it was, major storm systems, a lot of rising water, dropping water, stuff that was changing. And I feel like early on in my career that would have just took me out of it right away, not being able to rely on what I found in practice, just having to scrap it and find new fish. And I had to do that every day on Neely Henry. Caught all those fish on a outcast tackle swim jig and an OG Slim, power fishing. Had a really good tournament there, almost made the 10 cut. Tournament after that was Guntersville. That was first week of June. Should have been on paper the ledge tournament of the season. It was that time of year, all the fish are supposed to be out. The first day of practice I got there and I noticed better looking milfoil than I'd ever seen in the lake that I can remember. And I've been there quite a few times in the last few years, and immediately got drawn to that. Had some bites early in practice doing it and just absolutely committed to flipping grass. Texas rig tube, 4/0 extra wide gap, ringed VMC heavy duty hook. Just my total confidence stuff. Like I said, I've fished very few baits this year. Then after Guntersville, that was kind of really getting through Guntersville is when it really became a reality in my mind. Winning Angler of the Year, I'd made it through the southern swing. Headed north now where I typically do better, and went to Champlain and really practiced mostly for smallmouth and a little bit for largemouth, just kind of trying to play it safe. My mindset did change going into the last two tournaments. Rather than, I had good finishes, but I didn't gamble as much or try to win as much as I did just to have good finishes, because I had a good lead in the points. So I smallmouth fished a ton in practice, started on it first day of the tournament, and wasn't really happening. Had a couple largemouth areas. Reverted back to that, flipping milfoil with a Seth Feider. Caught big bags the first 2 days. That kind of dwindled on me. I didn't have a lot of largemouth stuff just because I didn't spend much time practicing it. And then third and fourth days of the tournament, the conditions got really good for smallmouth fishing. And I caught pretty much everything I weighed on an outcast tackle, fighter fly, black one. Fishing shallow smallmouths. And then had a really good tournament there. I think I made the top 10. I don't know exactly where I ended up, but got to fish exactly how I wanted to there versus chasing the deep drop shot smallmouth bite, or roaming fish, or largemouths doing other stuff. And then the last tournament of the year, we went to St. Lawrence, and same deal. I kind of played it safe. I knew the Lake Ontario was going to be the deal, and that's where it was all going to go down. But I stayed close to the ramp and just tried to keep the controlled. I didn't want to make a long run and run out of gas or break down or anything like that. So I stayed close. I did find a couple deep spots, but they didn't pan out for me. I just went back to like my favorite way to smallmouth fish, just shallow power fishing, trolling motor cranked up, pair of sunglasses, just hunting down shallow cruisers. Caught quite a few on a Z-Man jackhammer, a couple on a fluke. And then I picked some fish off, Ned rigging, tube fishing, and then little black hair jig. But you just kind of got to mix it up a bit on the shallow smallies. But other than that, I fished very few different baits this year. Just stuff I'm absolutely 100% confidence in, not trying stuff that, supposed to be the deal or somebody tells you works really well, just baits that I truly love. And a lot of stuff didn't go right this year, but kind of a lot of blessing in disguise stuff that went wrong that ended up, turning out to be positives. And then also, I'm not gonna lie, I had a bit of a horseshoe up my butt this year, and You know, every time I made a decision, it was the right one. Every time I needed a fish, I got a bite. And the very few fish I lost this year kind of came at times where it didn't hurt me that much. You know what I mean? It was never a day 1 or day 2, or I lost one and only weighed in 4. It was usually a day 3 or a day 4 loss where, you know, I had a good day already. That fish loss would have made it a bit better, but, you know, it was, you know, I lost 4 or 5 points because of that fish loss and not 30 or 40 points, you know what I mean? So I think it's harder to make adjustments when you're fishing deep. You know, you're kind of locked into, you got a school of fish out there, you know where they're at. You know, you might have to mess around with baits, but you're kind of committed to those. And I feel like fishing shallow, you're a lot more fluid. You can pull up on stuff, fish what you think's the deal with the, you know, whatever bait you feels like the right situation for that cast. And I think you can adjust easier on the fly fishing shallow. If you're just stuck on like graphs and waypoints, and that if you had to go down the bank, you know,
you'd be lost,
skipping a jig under, you know, willow trees or boat docks, and like you're just not going to be a fishing up there. Like I just think you can't. It's easier for me to go out deep than it is for one of those guys to go down the bank. You know what I mean? They just don't have any instinct. They're just, it's all like positive and negative feedback off their graph. There's no like feeling, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of it was real visual stuff this year. You know, a lot of it was just really obvious and visual stuff, and I think guys are just getting away from that. They all want to find that, you know, little sneaky top secret spot no one's ever fished. Have it all to theirself, and I just did a lot of the opposite of that. Fished really obvious visual stuff. You know, stuff you could fish fast, pull up, make a few flips, or make a few casts with a crankbait and run to the next one or whatever. Just try to feel each day out as it comes versus having the only thing I ever had planned in my head throughout the year was where I was gonna start the tournament day. And I had no plans after that versus, you know, a lot of guys want like a milk run. We're gonna start here, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go there, we're gonna go there. I kind of just felt it out every day and just, you know, learned from every hour of fishing what was going on and made adjustments and made a lot of the right ones. And there was fish that were basically uncatchable that are now very catchable, and we saw it at a lot of the tournaments. Even the Florida one, a lot of guys went to Rodman, they were catching them jerkbaiting, you know, over those deep flats, and they were just roaming fish around the timber. Lake Fork, they did it a bunch. You saw it on Gunnersville, you saw it on Champlain. A lot of guys using the live, you know, fishing those open water suspended fish, which were always really hit and miss, really hard to catch. And now the technology's come along. Those are really viable fish you can target and catch now because of the technology. But I just, you know, I felt like that's what everybody was doing, because it's really cool if you've never used it before, watching fish on it and catching them on it. And I think it's really addicting. And I think a lot of the guys, you know, you got guys like Patrick Walters, which I was pretty much, you know, neck and neck with all year for Angler of the Year. And it was basically, we kind of did opposite things, really. I was like straight old school and he was straight new school. I mean, he like never takes his eyes off his graph. He's pretty much always fishing off live, you know, jerk baiting or whatever, those suspended fish out in the middle of the lake. And I feel like I did the opposite, just kind of fished really instinctually, shallow, visually. Then obviously at the end of the year, we were both right there, but it was kind of an old school versus new school battle. And you know, I just saw a lot more guys leaning towards that trend of running live and catching those fish, and which it is fun to do and definitely wins a bunch of tournaments. And like I said, Patrick Walters almost won Angler of the Year doing it, but I just felt like getting away from it was kind of the deal. But there's definitely a time and a place for it. There's certain bodies of water, you know, that's the only thing you need. You go to like a St. Clair or, you know, a herring lake or a spotted bass lake, which we didn't have on the schedule this year. That's mandatory stuff. I'll be staring at my live when we go to those places the whole time too. But a lot of the places we went were kind of, you know, there's a good population shallow and a good population deep, and I just saw a lot of the guys chasing those, you know, live fish, and I kind of just went the other way, you know. I mean, if you're young trying to get into this, I think the most important things are, I mean, obviously you got to learn all the techniques, but if you fish for a while, you've become pretty proficient at the majority of the stuff. You definitely don't need to learn how to do everything. There's lots of baits I've honestly never caught a bass on. Like, I've never caught a bass on a whopper plopper. I don't think I've ever caught a bass on a hardhead. Those are both tournament winning techniques, but you know, I've stuck more, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't go throw those baits, because obviously they catch fish, but I just kind of really tuned in on, you know, a few of my confidence techniques, you know, cranking, swim jigging, flipping, chatterbaiting, and kind of rolled with it. And then the other thing I'd say is, especially guys coming up, just learn how to find your own fish. The thing I see the high school kids and with the boat captains making the biggest mistakes is, you know, they're just taking kids to the fish and saying throw here and you'll catch one, and that kid's, yeah, he's having a good time, and yeah, he might have won the tournament or whatever, but he didn't learn anything. He didn't know why they're there, what exactly they're on, how to replicate that, how to find it again on his own. And then getting a lot of spots from other people, I don't think that really benefits you in the long run. In the short term, yeah, you might have won whatever tournament on it, but eventually you're gonna get to a place where you don't know nobody. Nobody will give you any or get any help, and when you get to my level, you're not even allowed to get help. So I think really, you know, learning your strengths, becoming really good at those. Obviously you need to be able to do everything to save you from bombs, but learn your strengths, be really good at them, and learn how to find your own fish. And whether if your deal's side scanning, DI and 360 and live, that's cool, that's your deal. If it's not, if you're a John boat and a trolling motor and bank beater, that's cool too. You know, just find what suits you. You definitely, these are nice, the electronics, I love them. They do amazing things, and you can find stuff offshore that's incredible, but you absolutely don't need them to be successful at bass fishing. There's always gonna be a population of fish shallow. With the exception of some places you go, you're gonna have a harder time, you know, your St. Clairs, your spotted bass lakes, but you know, the whole year felt meant to be. I feel like when it's your time, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And I'm grateful I got to have one of those years. You know, a lot of guys don't. And a lot of it's nothing you could go back and replicate or practice. A lot of it was just really good on-the-fly decision making. And, you know, just keeping baits that I got a ton of confidence locked in my hands, and you know, not trying to chase stuff that wasn't my deal, you know, not listening to the dock talk, just fishing how I wanted to fish with the baits I love, and a little bit of luck, and you know, a lot of it was, you know, learn, trial and error, and you know, a lot of bad experiences to, you know, turn into a good year over the course of, you know, fishing since I was a kid. You know, a lot of mistakes I made, I just kind of corrected and fished really clean, and you know, had a hell of a time, hell of a year. Hopefully we can do it again one of these years. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but happy as hell it did, and proud of it, and you know, hopefully we can do it again. If not, oh well.